Hey everybody, it's Alistair here, aka that pesky social worker, coming to you live. Well, it won't be live when you see it, but live from my pantry. So I didn't record this on my walk this morning because it was just too damn windy. I did a little bit of a sound recording just because the wind was blowing and all you could hear was that. You couldn't hear me, you couldn't hear anything else. So apologies for that. So just to jump into it, there were a couple of things that I saw yesterday, sort of just like browsing around the social media world, that made me want to stop and reflect. So there are, like a lot of people in mental health, I do a lot of personal development, working on myself, because one of the running jokes, and I use the word joke very loosely, is that, you do the work or the work does you. So you have to stay on top of it. So, having insight, having that personal development, that personal awareness is something that's really important. And I noticed lately that, I follow a couple people, and I'm not name dropping for the sake of name dropping. This is just to illustrate a point. So there are two guys right now that I'm following, listening to. The first one is Brendon Burchard, and I'm reading his book High Performance Habits. And then there's another guy. I feel really bad. I cannot recall his last name. His Instagram handle is Michael Unbroken, and he released a book called Think Unbroken. I think it's Michael Anthony is his name. Just started doing that. And what I've noticed is that both of them on their social media accounts have been receiving some negative comments for what they've been saying the last couple of weeks throughout the pandemic. And you're probably like, okay, why are you name dropping? Why are you talking about social media comments? And why are you talking about this? It has nothing to do with the names. It has nothing to do with the negativity. What I'm realizing when I look at this situation, what's happening is that people are in an emotionally reactive space, are responding to them. And the reason why is because, whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it, whether, we want to own it, collectively right now, we are dealing with a trauma. This is an unprecedented time in history. We have more people out of work than have ever been out of work. We're on, it's almost everywhere has a stay-at-home order. We're not on lockdown yet, but it's a very serious time, where we don't really know what to do. And I think that in really distressing times like this, it smashes all of those trauma buttons that people are dealing with. And if you're somebody that's still active in your trauma, meaning that like the bad thing is still happening to you, you don't get the mental breathing room space, you can only live in reactivity, you can't be proactive. It makes sense that you're doing things like watching Tiger King. And if somebody is shaming you for that you're going to have a response to that, because it might be that show is what's getting you through this moment right now. For other people, it might be just napping all the time. For me, it's taking walks with Grace outside. It's, being active. It's taking time throughout my day to stop, recharge, to do these things. But what I've really noticed is that when we have these events like this, it highlights where people are in their healing process. Okay. And what I mean by that is that where I am in my trauma healing process is different than where, Michael is in his, and Brendon is in his, and you are in yours, and my landlady is in hers, and my neighbor is in his. Like, everybody's in a different place. And when we have these large, impactful events, it really highlights where in that trajectory of healing we are. And so if you're a person who's an influencer, thought leader, like if you're somebody who gives unsolicited opinions, and you are in a different place of healing than maybe some of your audience, there's going to be that disconnect. Because there are people who look at times of crisis like this and are like, Jesus Christ, how am I going to make it? Like, how am I going to live through this? Because the need is so real on such a base level. We're on base level needs. We're focused on how am I going to keep food on the table? How am I going to keep the lights on? We don't have time for, the jargony term is self-actualization, which is the level of work that people, like myself, like Brendon, like Michael, like other people who are, trying to be influential, a lot of the other therapists that you see online, one of the things that we are doing is working on ourselves to be able to handle it. And so for some of us, not all of us, and there is no shame in this at all whatsoever, there are some of us that just respond to crises in a different way. There are some of us who have gotten to a place in our trauma healing journey where we recognize we still have that initial freak out. Like, when this shit happened, I was I lost my mind. The first 3 days I was in complete and total denial, and then the whole week after it became like real, like everywhere was just shutting down, toilet paper and potatoes were nowhere to be found. I went into a serious existential spiral, and it lasted about a week and a half, and then I got out of it, and I was like, you know what, this is the time. I need to be working on myself. I need to capitalize on this. For some pardon me, for some people that is the exact opposite of what they want to hear. Sometimes people just want to hear it's okay to be soft, it's okay to rest, it's okay to be gentle, it's okay to watch TV, it's okay to not really be engaging. For those of us that are in a different place in our healing process, that have gotten to that point where we're no longer reactive, we're no longer living in that moment, we're able to be proactive, future oriented, and think about, okay, what's on the other side of this, like what comes after this. And that's a big step in the healing process, because especially if you're a young person who grew up in a traumatizing situation, at a very important developmental stage, between the ages of 13 to, I would say, about 18, there's a lot of neuroplasticity that goes on, and your prefrontal cortex, this part right up here, the front chunk that's responsible for making decisions when you're emotionally dysregulated, is not fully formed until, if you are a cisgender woman, meaning that you were assigned female at birth based off of your genitalia and you agree with that. 26 is when your brain is fully developing, or no, excuse me, 25 for cis women. For cis men, meaning that you were assigned male at birth based on your genitalia and you agree, that's 26. Okay, so quarter of a century technically is when humans are done growing, period. Like, that's how long it takes. So if you are a young person who is in consistent trauma, especially if you have a complex PTSD diagnosis, you learn to live in that perpetual fear state. You think that this is going to last forever, because in those formative years, when you literally, conceptually, your brain could not conceive of something on the other side of what's going on. Everything felt like, this is going to be my life forever. This is going to be my life for fucking ever. Everything's going to suck. I'm always going to be terrible. I'm always going to be a loser. I am always going to just be like the worst. And if you don't have an environment that supports otherwise, or if you don't have people that are invested in you, you go through that really critical developmental stage hanging on to that belief, and not really getting that level of, I mean, the reality is that it's maturity, not in terms of like, oh, you're so mature for your age, but like actual growth. We don't reach that maturity level of being able to do it until we're a quarter of the way into our lives. So give yourself some grace with all of that, okay? So that's why we have people who sometimes feel like, this is why, it's always going to be this way forever. Oh my God, it's like, henny penny and the sky is falling. It's because in that very important developmental stage, we never had somebody saying, hey, listen, like, shit's rough. We're going to get through this. A lot of people are still stuck in the, this is how it's going to be forever. This is how it's going to be forever. Oh my God. And then some of us are like, no, I've been through this. I've been through some shit, and I know that I can get through it. So for those of you that are struggling, that respond, that feel like it hits you in a bad place when somebody says that you need to be working on yourself right now instead of sitting on the couch watching TV. I want to remind you, number one, you don't have to listen to anybody. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to Michael. You don't have to listen to Brendon. You don't have to listen to anybody that you don't want to listen to. The reality is that you are the expert of your experience. Okay? Nobody else can be an expert on that except for you. And number two, everybody just needs to have some patience and some grace with everyone else right now. We are all coping in our own unique way. So for those of us that are in a different place in our journey and we feel good, it's time for us to say, you know what? Other people are not motivated by this, but I am. Other people, if you need that softness, use it. That's all you really need. It's okay to be soft. It's okay to take time with yourself. But I also am of that train that, when we have times to stop, it is an opportunity to stop and reflect. But if that's not something that you're capable of doing, that's okay.